Good morning, everybody. My name is Jimmy Gustafson, and along with my wife, Josie, who unfortunately is at work right now and is very sorry she couldn't join us this morning. But my wife, Josie, and I are very, very happy and pleased to sponsor this morning's conference with Big Bend INE Summit. And we're sponsoring because we know that my wife and I know that you all are the good guys who toil somewhat anonymously to make our community a better place to live for everybody that lives here. And Tallahassee is a great place to live. And that reflects on the good work that you all do. And so Josie and I hope this conference is a great success, and we're pleased to sponsor this. And we hope you all have a great day today, and that you get a lot of good information to make our community even better moving forward. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. And Jimmy, thank you so much, you and Josie, for being sponsors of this morning's Big Bend Summit breakfast panel discussion. We are grateful so much for your support and continued love for the nonprofit sector. So, Jimmy, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Yes,
great. Thank you. Well, welcome, everyone, and TGIF. This is day 2 of the Big Bend Summit, so we're excited. Today is a full day of great activities, great classes, and then we're honoring some amazing local leaders for the Ennies at 12:15. So we look forward to seeing you then. And then right now, I am so excited to introduce one of my favorite people and also a board member, Mickey Moore. Mickey Moore is the principal and consultant of Moore Business Strategy. So good morning, Mickey.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be a part of this, all that you do and the work behind this. Thank you so much. And thank you, Jim and Josie, as well. It's awesome.
Yes. Well, we could not have picked a better facilitator for this morning's program. And let me tell you a little bit why. Because Mickey has served, well, coffee is a good thing to get started, right?
Yeah.
He's got his coffee. But also, Mickey has served as an executive director. And then he's also worked in the business field as well, and business industry, the banking industry. So he's seen both perspectives of our topic this morning. So that's really critical for leading this. But Mickey, I'll just turn it over to you so you can introduce our panelists. Before I do that, just one quick note, scheduling note that unfortunately Stephanie Bowden with Comcast is not able to join us this morning. She does have a business emergency that popped up and extends her apologies. But we will definitely have Stephanie back, so she is willing and able to provide some great information to us. So Mickey, without further ado, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. And let me get here. There we go. Good morning. We're my panelists here. So we've got Vicki Whaley and Andrew Gay. There we are. All right. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning.
With FNBC and Grimsley. Do you have your coffee with us? Yeah. Good to go?
I've made it through the coffee this morning. I've switched over to water.
Okay. Again, thank you to both of you for participating with Ennie, and as we try to accomplish our mission, right, to impact the nonprofit community through education and advocacy and collaboration, which is what you're doing today, collaborating with us to benefit our community. So thank you very much. And as Felina mentioned earlier, we should be wrapped up here by noon. It's a long breakfast panel. So just kidding. Wanted to make sure that coffee was working. So first off, let's jump right in, right? Because I want to be cognizant of everybody's time, and they're here to hear from the two of you, and we'll go back and forth. And if we get any questions from those watching, utilize the chat function, and we'll work those through while we're in the panel today. So let's go ahead and give both of you an opportunity. And Vicki, I'll start with you. Briefly, tell us what you do, what your company does, how long you've been with the company, and then share maybe one personal passion of yours when it comes to a charitable cause in this community or nationally, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. I'm really honored to be here today to represent FBMC. FBMC is an employee benefit consulting company, and what that means is we help employers to get the best out of their employee benefit programs for their employees. we've been doing that for about 43 years in total. I've been honored to be part of that team now for the last 2.5, almost 3 years. And my role at the company is I'm the vice president of service. And what that means is I help our service team to provide the best level of service that we can for our clients and our teammates, right? Because sometimes you have internal customers and sometimes you have external customers. So we really strive to be the best of the best when it comes to service, and we do a great job at it. So, when you ask me what my personal kind of contribution to the community is, I probably about 5-6 years ago started working with a group called Warriors in Quiet Waters here in the area, and it was such a privilege to get to help that team. They would help wounded warriors to kind of get back to some semblance of normalcy through access to things like fishing and hunting, and to me that was a different way to bring them back and rehabilitate them back into activities that they were used to, that they lost by being wounded. And more recently, being able to be part of FBMC's Giving Back. We spend a lot of time giving back in our community in various ways, and it's kind of neat that so many of our charities align with my own personal goals, and so it's really helped a lot to be able to give back that way.
Thank you, Vicki. Andrew, same question.
Good morning, and thank you for having me a part of the panel. I think I will probably represent more of the small business sector this morning. So Grimsley & Company CPAs, we're a tax and business consulting firm here in Tallahassee. Been around since the early 80s. I'm a partner here at our CPA firm, and we specialize every day. I tell people we look to change people's financial picture for the better. That comes in numerous ways and looks different for every client that we have, but that's our focus and our mantra on a daily basis. And so I've been with our CPA firm here for 5 years. Came into this industry 5 years ago. Before that, I worked at Capital City Bank, who's obviously a great community partner as well. So that really set the foundation for giving back to the community, the experience I learned there at Capital City, and then coming into the small business world and how I can implement that here every day in our CPA firm, implement that in our employees and our culture, as well as our interaction with our clients. And so some of the focus areas for me personally, for personal charitable interests, one for me is Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I'm very involved with City Church, which is my local church, and we interact specifically with the Hang Tough Foundation, as well as numerous other nonprofits. And then here through the firm, the last few years, we've really engaged in the Ronald McDonald House Stone Crab Fest, not because we like to eat stone crab as much, even though we do, but because of their mission. And we have had some clients that have had some personal experiences with the Ronald McDonald House and family members related to our clients that has really been touching and really allowed us to see the volume, the impact that they've had in our community. So that's just a couple ways that we've been involved personally.
Okay, thank you. And again, I appreciate you sharing your personal interest as well. One thing today to talk about, what sponsors, small business, corporate foundations may be looking for, but it's another to hear, the personal interest as well. So thank you for sharing. So the next question, I want to talk a little more about social responsibility for your companies, right? So tell us a little bit about that, the avenues and lanes of social responsibility within your company, but include details for us how you communicate that, right? So what guidelines do you provide? How do you provide it? Is it on the website? Is it in a newsletter? So if I were to reach out to you, where can I get a hold of that information as well? So Andrew, we'll start with you this time first, and we'll go back and forth. Okay.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mickey. And so, with us being a boutique accounting firm, 8 to 10 employees at any given time, ours is probably less formal than some of the larger organizations here in town. So how we do it more is through a grassroots effort through our employees. I am constantly meeting with our employees, talking with them about not only what's going on within our organization, but in their personal life, as well as being intentional about my conversations directly with my employees about their social responsibility and their involvement within the community. So we do hold a standard for our employees to have at least 10 hours of community service per quarter. That was something that I learned from back in my Capital City Bank days. And so we feel it's a good baseline. Obviously, a lot of our employees go above and beyond that, but we feel like it's a good baseline to establish within our culture. And then specifically, most of the time, the interaction with a nonprofit, an opportunity within our organization to participate with a nonprofit is me communicating with them directly, communicating the values of our organization, what we're passionate about. And so you will find, and I'm sure you will find this in a lot of smaller organizations across our community, that it's not as necessarily formalized in a website format, for example, but more of a direct conversation, with the parties that are a part of the nonprofit we're dealing with.
Good. Thank you, Andrew. And, I'm going to come back around to that a little bit about the internal processes and how you encourage your employees and then that decision-making process. I'm going to talk to both of you about that in a minute. One thing I have seen on the business side, the for-profit side, is there's a lot of VTO nowadays that businesses are putting into volunteer time off that people are putting into their handbooks for their employees. So obviously, Vicki, that's right in your lane, but so you can speak to that now, but primarily tell me a little bit about your company's social responsibility, how you communicate that to the community.
Yeah. Well, I think Andrew hit on a very good point, which is it's about culture, right? It's the culture of the organization, whether you're a small organization or a large one. We do have a more formal process for sure. We have an actual developed community service team that's almost like a committee. We dedicate a percentage of our budget every year to that team so they know how much money they have to spend in that area. And that team is specifically looking for organizations that are more at a disadvantage in collecting funds or raising funds, maybe than larger organizations. So that team typically gives to smaller nonprofits that are serving the disadvantaged in their communities, more so than maybe some of the bigger nonprofits that have other resources and access to funding. And then the other side of our organization that's less formal is the types of businesses that we align ourselves with that involve donations, sponsorships, in-kind, or even volunteer work, where it's really what our employees are bringing forward to our leadership team to say, this is important to me. Can we support it? How can we support it? Whether it's either through raising money amongst our teams, or maybe it's donations. We do a donation every year to our elder services, which makes all of us feel really good going into the holidays to feel like we're helping those who need our help. We have a list of over 20 organizations that we help throughout the year that are not formalized donations or contributions or volunteer time. I love the idea of the volunteer time off, and I'll definitely be bringing that up with our leadership team. I'm already learning some new things today, but I think it's all comes back down into the culture that's driven through the organization. If the organization believes in the community and believes in giving back, then you're going to see it in how they act. For us, we post it on our website. It is actually part of our hiring page. And one of our hiring questions is around, community. How do you feel in your community? What does inclusivity look like to you? Those kinds of questions, because it helps us to determine if the person we're bringing in is going to live and breathe who we are as an organization, or if they're going to be more individualized.
Wow. Hey,
Vicki, thank you for sharing that. We just got a little note from our producer, Chrissy Souter, just to give a couple of shout outs this morning, Mickey, to some of the comments that have been coming in like crazy. So Mickey, everyone's tuned in, and we want to thank Carolyn Collins. Thank you for your comment about Capital City Bank Group and what they do and how they contribute. And it sounds across the board, there are a number of different ways in which businesses and corporations or small businesses, how they can give back to the nonprofit sector. And Michelle Robledo, thank you so much about FBMC. Definitely has a huge heart that was set by the founder, Mike Sheridan, and it continues to this day Dr. Patricia Manning, we're so grateful that you have joined us. TCC is also a phenomenal supporter of the nonprofit sector. Ronald McDonald House is a recipient, Refuge House, and of course, Any is a big recipient of TCC and what they have to offer. I want to give a couple of other shout outs too, Mickey. We've got joining us our friend Tim Center, and we have Jackie Malone on, our program committee chair, Byron Green. Thank you for taking the time this morning. If you have any questions for our panelists, we invite you to write it in the comments. I know our panelists will be more than happy to answer any questions for you. And then, of course, Mickey is here to answer questions as well. He brings forth a lot of experience in this field as well. So, Mickey, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much. Glad to have everybody with us this morning. So let me dig a little more, kind of a follow-up question that may not have been on my list already, but because you touched on a couple things, right? So in the nonprofit community, diversification, right, across many spokes on fundraising wheels is important, I believe, for nonprofits, right? So they're not too reliant upon just grants or too reliant upon just special events, right? But you hinted on something to where your organizations, you support events through sponsorships, or you support these organizations with direct gifts, right, to support their programs. So tell me a little more, if you can, how your organization differentiates between those. So if it's a sponsorship, what kind of ROI or things are you looking for in return or not, right? And if it's always just a straight gift, that's awesome, right? Because you're supporting the mission. So tell me a little bit more about that, if you don't mind. And Vicki, I'll start with you, and then we'll go to Andrew.
Sure. So the way that FBMC does that, we have two different, like I said, we have two different portions of our company that are committed to that community service drive. One is that, completely, just dedicated to just giving whatever way we can. Sometimes it's in monetary, sometimes it's not. But that committee, we only advertise those when that entity is looking for some type of return on that piece, but we are not personally looking for a return on those investments. Those are all about our community drive to give back. That was, Michelle mentioned it, that was started back when we were founded with Mike Sheridan 43 years ago, and he's still with us and still drives that in us every day. When we are looking for that return of investment side, when I am shifting to that other, more business aspect to sponsorships and giving, I'm looking for organizations that align somewhat to our mission. For example, we are a health organization. We are looking for protection, education. Those are really some of our core responsibilities, we feel like, with our clients. Protecting their employees from life's risks, providing them education about employee benefits. And so we look for organizations that have similar missions. We sponsored and partnered with Any for that specific reason. They provide education to their membership. They provide protection to their membership through legislation and different things. And that really drives that return on investment, is some type of alignment. So when I'm talking to nonprofits, if they're trying to find ways to get in, that's a big part of it, is figure out how you align to the organization's mission or values, and then drive that as your value proposition of why they want to partner with you, why they want to sponsor you. Because if there's a lack of alignment there, it's going to be really hard for them to get that passed through all the different levels of approval.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to kind of piggyback on some of the things that Vicki said. So from a charitable support, that is a line item that we do separate from our marketing advertising budget on a year-to-year basis. And the reason we think that's important is because we do want to be involved with these organizations for the right reasons, for the right purposes, and don't want necessarily ROI to drive that. There's certainly nothing wrong with the organizations in town that do choose to go that way. We feel like for us, it's the intention of why we want to be involved in the organization. And we look for factors to be involved. In addition to dollars, we also have human capital that, for a small firm like us that, has only a finite amount of resources to put towards some of these opportunities. Human capital is another way that we can maximize that charitable support and align that with our company interests. So we do look for, obviously we're tax and business consulting firm. Financial literacy is a big part of what we try to implement within the community and are passionate about. But we also look at, what our clients are involved with and maybe initiatives that our clients are supporting and putting time towards so that we can support our clients through those organizations as well. So that's something else we look for on the charitable support side. And then in marketing and advertising, we look at the event or the opportunity if it's in that bucket and look to see what type of are there business people there, are there individuals, so we can cater the opportunity, our involvement to the specific opportunity that may be on the marketing advertising side. And so I just have such appreciation for all the small businesses around town that are involved. You saw a lot of those comments, both large and small organizations that people are part of and are proud of. And our community, I think, just does a great job of finding these unique ways to be involved, whether it's from a human capital perspective, whether it's from a dollars perspective, and finding the right ways to lean in and help these organizations. So it makes me proud to be a part of Tallahassee.
Yeah, thank you both. Great answers. And, whether it be in the work I do with for-profit clients or when I was in the banking world, having that line item in the budget and understanding the two, and, sometimes you got to say no. But I remember Darren Holloman at the bank, he always talked about the human capital piece too, because we only had a certain amount of dollars per region we could, invest in the community, but what an investment we had with our people. So it's great to hear that from the two of you. So I want to dig a little deeper now for the nonprofits listening. Talk about approach. Okay, you probably get emails, you probably get phone calls, you probably get solicitations in the mail in a lot of different ways. And again, this is a safe space, and we want to hear directly in order for our nonprofit friends to do a better job in approaching your business. How should they be doing that? What recommendations do you have? What's the best way for them to maybe get in the side door versus the front door, to have a discussion with two organizations for support? So, Andrew, I'll start with you on that. What recommendations would you give our nonprofit friends?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always encourage anyone that I'm speaking with involved in a nonprofit to identify the organization, get to know them well enough to know when their budget cycle occurs, when are they identifying these dollars. And so that will obviously help, earmark potentially those dollars throughout the year, regardless of when the event is. So getting to know them well enough to know when their budget cycle occurs so you can timely communicate that ask at the appropriate time. And then some of the things just for the nonprofit world to know that small businesses are going through. I mean, we're looking at how does the organization impact our community? Obviously, there's various ways the nonprofits interact and their impact and involvement. So that's something we look for. Of course, was this in our budget or do we have the ability to budget for this opportunity? Are our employees passionate about the subject? That's something else we look for quite often. And then does it align with our core values, going back to what Vicki mentioned earlier, and looking to make sure that we are, aligning our core values, our employees' core values, our clients' core values with the opportunity that we're going to be associated with.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Vicki. I'm going to add to that.
Yeah, Andrew made some very, very good points. And the only thing I would say is, don't lose sight of local networking. As I mentioned, we have a committee that runs our community service team. Not a single member of that committee is an officer of our company. And so don't always try to go in, at a decision maker level. Sometimes you're networking with your next door neighbor who just works at an organization. You've heard both Andrew and I say, we get a lot of the recommendations of where we spend some of our charitable giving from our employees because our employees feel it's important. So, I think you have to approach things in more than one way. To Andrew's point, making sure that you're aligning, kind of back to what we were talking about earlier, but then also don't lose sight, like your neighbor, the guy that's bagging your groceries, like everybody knows somebody, and I know that the nonprofits do a great job of networking, just don't lose sight that any employee in an organization might be able to get your name in front of a decision maker that's going to bring you forward for monetary support or even volunteer support, because that's where you really get the biggest push on that social media or recognition or even visibility of your organization. Social media is crazy these days, between LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, everybody's using it. And what I found is, even just this morning, I shared this presentation this morning and I've already seen additional people share it. There's a lot to be said for that, because you're going to speak to someone that way. So even if an organization can only provide human capital resources, human capital is a major resource for many nonprofits, because then it gets that name out there, where somebody who does have a monetary donation might be willing to then give a monetary donation, because now they're seeing what the organization's doing.
Wonderful. Yeah, great points. And I love asking questions, right? And the terms we use a lot in the nonprofit community are stewardship, cultivation, right? And what I just heard from both of you, that it's important that our nonprofits are asking you good questions, right? That are asking you about your budget process, that are asking you how you go about making these decisions. But let me take it one step further for the two of you. Tell me a little bit about the stewardship in between those sponsorship opportunities, or in between the gifts, right? So if you're making that annual gift to a certain nonprofit in February, what's your expectations between March and next January? What could you recommend there? Where could our nonprofit friends do differently in that regard? Oh, sorry, Andrew. Sorry.
So that's a great point that you bring up, Mickey, and it's looking for the opportunity to interact with these organizations throughout the year, as opposed to that one-time event maybe you're sponsoring, and a lot of times that is an educational opportunity for the nonprofit to educate the organization that they're dealing with, the small business, the larger corporation, on the other various opportunities they have throughout the year, making sure, don't just assume that I know about the event happening in May or June, or maybe the continual volunteer opportunity for some of my employees to be involved with throughout the year that may maximize my involvement with the organization. So the educational component, communication component, and not assuming that I maybe know the other opportunities that are out there throughout the year is a big one that I can, attest to, as opposed to just hearing about, okay, I've secured the one sponsorship opportunity for this large event, but let's make it a more holistic conversation where we can say, okay, well, let's look for these various opportunities that either the human capital component can contribute to throughout the year, or maybe other various ways that I can be involved. So communication and education are a big part of that.
Thank you. Yeah, great point. Vicki, carry on that conversation for me, if you don't mind, taking it from that transactional to a relational item, right? Becomes a
Absolutely.
relationship.
Well, yeah, I think though, I think it's really, Andrew hit on it perfectly. I mean, it's about engaging us all year long. So that sponsorship, Any does a fantastic job of this. We do our sponsorship, but then we know throughout the year where we can bring additional value. Because look, we're not usually just giving our money to give our money. We give our money because we want to know we're helping the community. And so we want to be engaged. We want to be part of it. But we, kind of to Andrew's point, we don't always know. It's easy in your line of business, no matter what that line of business is, to get very narrow-sighted to your needs, right? And to forget the needs of the one that you've engaged with in some way. And so it's important to constantly be like, hey, we have this great event coming up in 2 weeks. If if some of your folks would be interested, we would be thankful to have them. Or have a sponsorship that you may pay up front, but it involves activities throughout the year. Hey, your sponsorship's going to get you visible at these events. If you have the date set, great. That makes it that much easier for us to make sure we've got, team members that can be there to represent, to be part of it. because again, that's where you're kind of tying in. We don't want to just give money to give money. We want to give money to actually feel like we're being part of something and really helping our community.
Comment from Carolyn Collins. So Carolyn, thank you so much for adding your comment to the live feed. And Carolyn has on here more personal questions. So how do you sustain your own energy and well-being to keep yourself going when there's always much work to do on behalf of others? When you're passionate about what you do and strive for excellence, you can become depleted by stress. What self-care do you practice to prevent burnout and illness? Well, boy, Mickey, I think that's a question for both of us. I'll go first on that one. I would tell you, yes, I think all nonprofit leaders in this, you are so driven by the need to serve others and help others. That yes, you can oftentimes forget about yourself. It's almost like sometimes being a mom, right? You end up putting yourself last. It's like everybody else comes first. But it's so fulfilling and gratifying that you do sometimes keep going, and that you don't realize maybe the signs and signals from your body that are telling you to slow down. And so I know personally for me, I find great peace in meditation, reading devotions, conversations with very inspiring, invigorating friends who also just provide some great feedback and encouragement. And you know what, within this circle, as Mickey had indicated earlier, this is about relationships. And when you form these wonderful, powerful relationships, like I love Vicky. I mean, we probably spend 90% of our time when we do talk about everything else except for the main purpose. Because it's about building those great relationships. And so, Caroline, personally, my advice for you is, kind of find that one solace thing that you do and thoroughly enjoy, whether it's walking in the park. I love yoga. I love painting. Just find a great escape that you can just kind of just escape from it for a minute and enjoy something that doesn't require your brain to constantly be focusing on feeding someone or housing the homeless or, putting on the next concert or that next fundraiser, because you do have to take a break and refresh from it all. So Mickey, what are your thoughts about that question?
It's pretty timely there. And I was planning today, literally last night, you can see these notes on my phone. I had a friend post something about that as an executive director this week, and being able to check out and what you do for self-care. And having been in those similar seats previously, I have notes. So I'm going to do a little video about that this afternoon and share it with everybody. But, for me, there's no surprise, right? I run. I think everybody knows that. That is my piece. And one thing I've shared with friends is work-life balance to me is kind of a myth. It's more about a work-life integration, right? Because there really is no true balance. It's finding those ways to do a little bit of all those things to where they work together, but keeping your own space through discipline and planning for yoga, for running, for walking, for knitting, for writing, journaling, whatever that may be, right? Because I think we recognize that executive levels, really every level in a position in a company, it's really hard to check out nowadays. I think that's a myth too. Do you ever really check out 100%? No, right? And if you're a CEO or an executive director, you can't afford to check out.
No.
What you do is you can plan and set boundaries. I'm a big believer in setting boundaries when it comes to those things. So anyway, more about that later. But that's a great question. I think it was from Carolyn Collins.
Yes, it was Carolyn Collins on that one, Mickey. And it looks like we're getting queued up for another question from Byron. So our own Byron Green had take peaceful breaks throughout the day was a comment that Byron had wanted to share. And I do think that is fantastic. Peaceful, healthy breaks, I might add you. No spiking the coffee. Yes, no spiking the coffee during the coffee break. I remember even hearing one time, Mickey and panelists, I remember an executive director said that their break, they would actually take a break during the middle of the day, and they would go to their car and take a 15-minute power nap. to escape the world.
Yeah.
And you know what? When you think about it, I won't say the name of the organization, but the work that they do on a daily basis, 8 to 10 hours a day, is serious work. They are in the business of saving lives, literally. And so to take a 15-minute break, mental break, step back from it, is totally understandable and acceptable. Let me give a couple of shout outs. I know we have Lance, who's joining us from Engaged Academics, and Barb Brown from FBMC team is participating and supporting her colleagues. So thank you on that. Mandy Bianchi, our favorite Mandy. Welcome, Mandy, for joining us. Thank you so much for your support. So Mickey, I'll toss it back over to you.
Yep. Thank you. So let's jump into another question. Of course, we're right now, COVID-19, the pandemic, right? So I want to hear from the two of you and how that has impacted your ability to support or how you support our local nonprofit community. Vicki, we'll start with you.
Sure. I don't think that there has been an organization in the U.S. that has not been impacted in some way by COVID, obviously some more drastically than others. Thankfully for us, we have had to be careful on our spending on our ROI side. We've had to be much more, for lack of a better term, judicious in how we're spending those funds, because we may need those funds for something else. The benefit to being an organization of our size is the funds that we have set aside for our community service team, because those are very stringent budgeted funds. We've been able to maintain that team with no interruption, no impact. We've mostly had just an impact on our non-budgeted items, and having to be just very careful how we're spending that. We haven't stopped it. We're just like everyone, we're very cautious and really look for trying to find ways to give in other ways than just monetary donations.
Okay. Thank you, Vicki.
Yeah, and just to keep the conversation going, as Vicki was saying, I mean, all organizations, we've obviously got to be frugal with our funds during this time, similar to, they're a large organization. Us as a small business, we have chosen to as well to kind of focus more on the line item in the budget in which, nothing is expected in return. And so as opposed to the advertising dollars where there's ROI and things like that, I mean, the reality is that these organizations, a lot of these sponsorship opportunities are event oriented. Well, most events now are online as opposed to in person. That potential business development impact and all those other things that occur at a lot of these great nonprofit events that we have here locally has gone away. And so being willing to commit to no expectation for return, but still knowing that you're supporting the organization. And although we haven't been able to maybe provide the full impact and support that we have in normal times, even small businesses identifying what they can do. I mean, every little bit helps. Nonprofits are probably one of the most highly impacted organizations from the pandemic. When you think about volunteer opportunities and all the things that make a nonprofit go round and round, the pandemic has had drastic effects on our nonprofit organizations. So no donation is too small, no opportunity is too small, and I think communicating with the organizations that we are involved with regularly and asking them, how can we help? I know we necessarily maybe can't write a big check right now, but are there other ways we can get involved? And not always having the organization, the nonprofit organization ask, but us small businesses ask too, how we can help is an important step in the right direction during this pandemic, unprecedented times.
Thank you. And the word I use quite a bit is participation, right? And participation can come in a lot of different ways. And in the nonprofit community, special events are typically that entry point, right? And how these nonprofits get a lot of new donors in because they go to the event for the first time and they get to see the people, hear about the mission. And then it becomes the nonprofit's role to reach out, in the next 10, 11 months to get those folks into the fold a little more. So when the pandemic comes, a lot of those events have suffered that way too. It's hard to get some new donors into the organization through those special events. So the fact, Andrew, you mentioned how important it is to participate in some way initially, whether it be a volunteer or referring somebody or a Zoom conference like this one. We're doing that as well. So thank you. Okay, so how about each of you share an example of a long-term relationship you have with a nonprofit in the community or regionally or nationally? You've hinted, both of you, of a few things you personally care about and another one or two that your organization already is involved with. But give us an example, a little more detail of a long-standing relationship with a nonprofit, the highlights of that relationship, if you can recall how it started and really what they do well to maintain it. I think that'll be beneficial for those listening today too. Andrew, I'll start with you.
Yeah, and I'll go back to one I referenced earlier with the Ronald McDonald House and our involvement there. So, I mean, that started, our passion for that started with a client that actually had a granddaughter who went through a severe illness, and they actually, our client stayed in, and their children stayed in one of the rooms that the Ronald McDonald House provided, and it touched us so. And just hearing the personal impact that our client provided to us about that experience, our client ultimately ended up donating to the organization, getting the room named after their, deceased grandchild. And it was such a touching opportunity for me to just be a part of and understand what they went through and see what the Ronald McDonald House provided to them in our business. I always tell people your CPA knows more about your personal life than most other advisors. And so it's just the nature of the business in which I'm in, that we have a lot of these personal connection points, personal opportunities, and it impacted me in such a way that I knew that was an organization that we wanted to be a part of for the long term, because again, seeing the impact that had on our client and their family really touched me. So we continue to look for opportunities to be involved, to attend events, and so sometimes it comes from that personal touch, that unfortunate life occurrence that impacts one of the partners or one of the people as a part of the organization, to start that and continue that through.
Awesome. Thank you. Quite a touching story. Thanks for sharing that. Vicki.
One of our longest standing relationships really came from where we started. As an organization, we started it started with a client, because we started with school districts, 43 years ago. And an organization came out in support of school districts and the kids that they reach. And we've been working with that organization ever since they were founded. They were founded after we were, so we've really contributed to them every year, because they help to support the people that are helping the kids in the community. And throughout those years, our involvement with school systems and with student-based type sponsorships has really been kind of a consistent message for us, whether it be getting school supplies, whether it is making sure they have food, making sure they have what they need to be able to get their educations and become productive members in our society. That's been one of our big ones. In addition to that, we most of our other stuff has been very localized. We actually have a team member out in Texas who is very near and dear to us, because the organization that she leads sponsors support for homeless teenagers, and that's, I never realized the volume of kids that are impacted by homelessness And so knowing that we're able to give back to, to their organization there, it's been nice as we've grown and gotten to be a bigger organization that our community has grown. So it's no longer just Tallahassee. We now expand into other states and other cities. And it's fantastic to see, because the needs that our town has, and then to be able to see how other people can benefit from those same things it's just it's awe-inspiring at times.
Thank you. And I hear a lot about it, that connection, right? How strong the connection is between the two of your companies and those nonprofits. But let me push one more question on this. What do those nonprofits do differently to help sustain that relationship as well, to help maintain? What are some of the things that they're doing outside the mission, but in dealing with you as funders to maintain that relationship? Vicki, I'll go back to you, and then we'll jump to Andrew.
Sure. So it's kind of interesting you mentioned that, because one of the organizations, they actually come to us and say, hey, because you've been such a long time sponsor, what could we be doing better with our sponsorships? And so they ask us, like, and so I gave them some of the same feedback that we've shared here today, find ways for us to engage all year long. And that to me was huge when they came to us and said, hey, how can I serve you better? I know your organization, kind of to Andrew's point earlier, I know when you budget, I know how to ask you for money, but what more could I be doing to stay valuable to you so that you want to give me money next year too? I mean, that's, that was it kind of took me by surprise at first, because it was definitely not what you expected. But it kind of makes you feel like you're part of the process and you're part of the organization. It's not as, once you feel like you are, for lack of a better term, connected, once you feel like you are all in it together, it makes it easier to donate year after year, because then you know it's coming, to expect it, what to do, how to help, and you feel like it's making an impact.
Yeah, and honestly, Vicki, I don't know that there is a better word than connectivity. And if you've been around me, connectivity and participation, two of my favorite words. Andrew, go to you.
I'd sort of piggyback on what Vicki was saying, but I go back to what I was talking about earlier about communication and education. And so I think the principle applies, whether it's in small business. I talk to our employees, our team all the time about, let's not assume that our clients are going to know about the opportunities that we have to present to them, the ways that we can help them. And the same applies in the nonprofit world. Let's not assume that these organizations know how they can best impact. And so communication, education, like you do with any top tier donors or throughout the organization, all the way down to the basic levels, if they have a better understanding of what you do, how you do it, and how it can make an impact for them, then they're going to be more likely to participate when it comes a time for them to actually participate. You're going to be the one that they think about. And so repetition and redundancy through a very respectful, structured way is very important. And that communication and educational component, again, allows these business owners, when I do think, oh, okay, I've got an excess line item in the budget where I can allocate some dollars to a nonprofit, who's going to be the ones that come to mind? It's most likely going to be the ones that are that I'm in communication with constantly, and that communication, to Vicki's point, is not always necessarily an ask. It's involvement with understanding the business owner, what's going on with them, and also having constructive dialogue about how the experience can be better improved. And so I think that process ultimately reflects in an overall healthier relationship between the organizations.
Awesome. And what I hear there is, them being proactive and consistent and being top of mind. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. And Lena, go ahead.
Well, Yes, it looks like we have some questions, Mickey, that have popped up on our live feed. So, Chrissy, if you'll bring those up. So at FBMC, this is from Barb Brown. At FBMC, several of us are board members of different nonprofit organizations. We encourage volunteerism and sponsorship. As a member of our community service team, love the work we do, helping people who help people. Thanks, Barb, for mentioning that. We definitely know that that's part of the FBMC culture, and I have experienced that personally. So thank you for sharing that. And we're welcome to have Terry Sue Aldridge, one of our program committee members and executive director of Springtime Tallahassee, join us this morning. So good morning, Terry Sue. Excellent way to start the second day of the Big Bend Summit. We appreciate those comments that have been coming in over the last 24 hours. So we thank everyone for your participation. It means a lot to us. And it looks like we've got a question from Terry Sue. So question to the panelists. Any tips for a nonprofit organization in repairing and rebuilding a relationship or partnership with a past donor or sponsor when there's been a misstep? And that's a fantastic question. Can you go back? Is there a second round to reestablishing that relationship? So how about we start with Vicki with addressing that question?
Thanks, Felina. I would be happy to. Terry Sue, that's a good question because, sometimes you think, oh, I've made a mistake. I can't go back. Like it's embarrassing, But one of the things that I appreciate the most from any of my partnerships is just transparency. I try to give it. I try to receive it. Sometimes we make mistakes. Life happens. None of us are perfect. And in this COVID world, even more of us are less perfect. Sometimes we miss things, we forget things. I think part of it depends on the level of misstep. When it's something on a level that's, there are levels where I think it takes a lot of finesse to be able to step back. But if it's simple things like, forgetting, losing a connection and missing a relationship, like things like that, I think it's easy, just own it. Go in, say, hey, we've had this mistake. We appreciate this relationship. And because of that, I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to own the aspects of it that I need to own. And I'm going to apologize for it. And I hope we can move past it. And then it's just a matter of, kind of putting your time and energy where you've made a promise, and then making sure that commitment gets followed through. We're all going to make mistakes. It happens, but the easiest way to get past it is just transparency, acknowledgement.
Yeah, and I would just, to that same point, encourage those. That's a great question, Terry Sue. But encourage those that have had a misstep to give themselves some grace. I mean, what you're doing on a daily basis in the nonprofit world is making a positive impact to our community. Nobody's perfect. And I always tell our employees, when we make a mistake, we're going to own up to it. As Vicki said, I'm going to reach out personally to the client or the person we're involved with and apologize on behalf of the organization. And then you're going to ask what you can do to repair that moving forward. And ultimately, if that organization or that business or that individual is not willing to move beyond that, then you at least have settled the opportunity. But most times, I think you will find that people are willing to forgive. And if they're truly passionate about the subject that your nonprofit is involved with, then they are going to offer feedback, offer comments, maybe relieve some frustration, hopefully not. But once they've moved past that point, I think there's a basis there to move forward and begin repairing that again. So I would encourage any organization in the nonprofit world to not shy away from missteps, because again, the good work that you're doing on a daily basis has to count for something, right? And so people will hopefully give you some grace and understand that they've made mistakes in their business or in their personal lives as well, and that this is an opportunity to mend whatever was broken and move forward. So that's a great question.
Awesome. Thank you both for those answers, and giving people the benefit of the doubt, right, and assume everybody has good intentions, I think can go a long ways. And so let me keep an eye on the clock. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Let me say thank you again to Jimmy and Josie, right, for sponsoring today. Let me say thank you to the two of you. Again, Grimsley and Company, and then FMDC, and of course, Andrew and Vicki. Thank you for sharing your stories, your advice, your suggestions, and more importantly, thank you for your generosity and the impact that y'all are making in our community. It is great. It's much needed, but it's appreciated as well. Okay. And for that, I'm going to throw it over to Felina to continue our wrap. Okay.
Great. And thank you, panelists. And Mickey, thank you so much for your time and support of the breakfast this morning. Again, we want to thank Jimmy and Josie for their sponsorship of the breakfast. A couple of highlights about what's going on for the rest of the day. For those of you who have registered for the Big Bend Summit, you are pivoting with us with this virtual summit throughout the day. We have coming up at 10:15, we've got 2 classes for you to choose from. One is Using Modeling to Think Differently, the nonprofit lean organization model, which is presented by Mike Campbell, our very own local talent, Mike Campbell, with the Jim Moran Institute for Global Entrepreneurship. And then we have a special guest joining us out of Tampa, Florida, Tammy Charles. She's the CEO and Chief Strategist for Innovo Strategic Consulting. And her subject matter is going to be the Social Enterprise Aspirations Cascade. You do not want to miss this. We're talking about diversifying your revenue streams, and Tammy is going to guide you through an awesome class about how you can do that through social enterprise and entrepreneurship. And then we don't want you to forget to bid on our silent auction. We're close to reaching our goal. In fact, we're only about $250 away from reaching our goal. And that silent auction closes at 7 o'clock tonight. So please bid generously. And last but not least, if you're participating with us live, we will see you back at 12:15, where we are honoring, celebrating, and recognizing some amazing leaders in the nonprofit sector. So join us back at 12:15 for the Ennies. I want to thank Christy Souders again for her wonderful leadership in this virtual world. Thank you, Barb Brown, again for joining us. Everyone on social media, we will see you shortly at 12:15. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.